Good morning. This is Siva Devaki from MassMailer. Thank you so much for joining the webinar today. Today I'm going to talk about MassMailer admin essentials, especially when you're trying to administer MassMailer. You may have noticed certain issues, and you would raise a support ticket or contact us, try to figure out what's happening. I thought it's very important for me to kind of talk about certain aspects in which you really need to know, what to be done, what not to be done. That way you can minimize contacting us, and also you can educate yourself. Okay, this is how MassMailer works, and this is what needs to be done, right? So I thought maybe I would talk about certain tips and tricks and troubleshooting tips. It's going to be a lengthy webinar, so I may just break this up into two. So let's see how things go. If you already install MassMailer and you set up MassMailer, this may not be really important for you, but it's always good to know, because if at all you're trying to reinstall the app in a different environment for any reason, no, it's definitely very crucial for you to understand certain troubleshooting tips right there. So there's a very old feature in Salesforce called IDS. So our app also is a legacy app, so which has been kind of revamped. In the older versions of MassMailer, we had a document feature in which we rely on the IDS feature in Salesforce. That's why whenever you're trying to install the app, it will ask you to enable IDS, but it's nothing to do with the MassMailer functionality as of today. Since it's a legacy code, then you are still prompted. There's no way we can really bypass this. You just have to do it. It's a simple step. All you need to do is just go to Salesforce setup, IDS, and IDS settings, and enable IDS. So read that as Salesforce setup. I think there's a typo there. So basically, if at all you're having any installation problems and you get that message that you don't have the IDS feature enabled, just go take care of it and you should be good to go. And also, whenever you're trying to set up MassMailer, it's very important to make sure that you have the force.com site defined beforehand. So again, all you do is just go to Salesforce setup, type sites, and then you would be prompted to create a force.com site if at all it's not available. And if you're an admin for Salesforce, I'm sure you are very well aware of what force.com site domain is all about. And also, we strongly recommend that you define the my domain and deploy that before you start setting up MassMailer. We've noticed that some of the pages would not work. And especially in Lightning, if you don't have the my domain set up, because some of the Lightning components, they rely on the my domain. So you would want to, define the my domain and deploy that before setting up MassMailer, even though it's an optional, because not everybody is in Lightning. But we strongly recommend that you actually define this and deploy. And very important for you to understand how to upgrade, even though we have release notes that are published. But it's very simple. One thing all you need to remember is whenever you get a notification from MassMailer that there is a new release, don't delay, just go ahead and upgrade. But when you're upgrading, try to upgrade in the Sandbox environment first. We strongly recommend that you don't upgrade right away in production because things may break if at all you have not thoroughly tested your use case scenario. Since it's an app, you always want to give some deployment period, could be a week or 2 weeks. Make sure you install it in Sandbox, everything is working fine, then go ahead and upgrade in production as well. So basically, whenever you get an email notification from MassMailer, make sure that you upgrade to the latest version. The advantage is that you always get bug fixes that are pushed to your environment directly. You don't have to worry about the upgrades to patches, because the patches are auto-published or auto-upgraded to you. So typically we have anywhere between 2 to 4 major releases in a year. This year we had so far one. So there's going to be one more. So it's not too many times that you're actually upgrading in any single year. It could be anywhere between 2 to 4, maximum being 4. So it's not a lot of work, but you still want to go incremental and make sure that you upgrade in Sandbox and then upgrade in production as well. And once you've upgraded the app, it's very important that you go to MassMailer setup and then go to the finish step and then click on the finish button. So do not forget, because there's certain upgrade scripts that we run. It's not that every version will have this, but we strongly recommend just go to finish in MassMailer setup tab, and then click on the finish button for every single upgrade that you do. That's very important. And if there are any more instructions, what you need to do for a specific release, we'll have that part of the release notes. So you don't have to really, remember anything other than clicking on the finish button and then upgrading Sandbox before you do in production. But otherwise, any specific instructions that we have for upgrading will be part of that release notes. And so process builder and flow integration, again, we kind of come up with all these points based on our experience working with other customers and what they've done, what mistakes they would have done. So we thought maybe we collectively have this video that talks about certain usual mistakes that customers may do. So like when you're defining a process builder process flow, right? You always give a template ID or a template name. Sometimes we notice that the template ID is invalid. Maybe they're just copy pasting from Sandbox to production and that ID is not even there, and they go blank and why is it not working? So it is very important to make sure that you have the correct template ID or the template name in your email alert definition, the integration that you do with the process builder or flow with MassMailer. Okay? And again, very important, the template folder that you have should be accessible by all users. So whatever template that you're going to use, it is always part of a template folder, classic template folder. That folder has property called, folder is accessible by all users, or some users are hidden. So you got to make sure that it's accessible by all users. Otherwise, the emails won't go out. Very simple. So that's a very common mistake that we noticed. Also, the from address. So this is, again, I think it's just the way human brain works. So there's a from name and from address. I've seen customers flipping these two, meaning they would put the name in the from address field, which is not an email address. And there's no error that you see when you're actually creating this process builder. But ultimately, when you're actually sending out an email, emails won't go out, and it's very tricky. Sometimes, our eyes don't really go in and pinpoint. You just look at, oh, okay, you define from address, from name, good to go. Why is it not going? But if you carefully observe, the from address should be an email. It should not be just a normal string. It got to be an email address, and make sure that it has got the correct email format. And also, you have to give the from address and to address fields in an email. If you look at how you're sending out an email, you always give the from address and to address. Otherwise, the email won't go. So you have to define this, and remember defining this. We actually recommend that you also give from name and to name as well, even though that is optional. You still want to give the from name and to name as well. But in case of campaign, we pick up the to address automatically. If you're sending out a campaign, you really don't have to give, because that's automatically taken care. But even if you give it, that's not a problem. So from address to address, make sure that you have it. And when it comes to, again, the user permissions, especially if you're trying to send out these email notifications via the process builder flow, what I noticed is that so all users do not have access to the MassMailer permission set. So that's one common mistake that I've noticed. So if you want to get the process builder flow working, you always need to give the non-MassMailer user permission set to the non-MassMailer users. So it should read as non-MassMailer user, a non-MassMailer user permission set to the non-MassMailer users. That's one important thing. And then also at the user level or the profile level, there is something called modify metadata through metadata API function access that should be given for all the users. Whoever would want to have access to MassMailer, they need to have that particular permission. So you have to make sure that you give that, especially people will go mad when the emails are not sent through the process builder flow, just because this particular permission is not given. And if you're using MassMailer Verify, it's very important to make sure that you have enough credits available to validate your emails. Again, we will be giving you like a message if at all it's not going through. We'll send you an alert saying that you don't have enough credits available. But always check your credit balance. In the next release, we're actually going to display this balance information on the MassMailer setup page under usage. So it will be very easy. But again, make sure you got enough credits. And then, especially if you're using MassMailer Verify, it's very important that the MassMailer guest user, which is created by the system itself, whenever you install configure MassMailer, the MassMailer guest user, which is not visible, the regular UI when you go to Salesforce setup and users. So this need to have a read-only license. And if you notice our pricing structure, you must have noticed that we have made read-only access user. One read-only access user is mandatory. That should be assigned to MassMailer guest user. We typically take care of this the moment we onboard any client. But if you are older customer and if you purchased maybe a few months ago, if you do not have this access given to the guest user, the read-only access, you should certainly provide that, provided you're actually using MassMailer Verify feature. And also that MassMailer guest user, it's very important. If at all you're gonna use these two features, view in a browser and reply features. Again, not many people may be using it, I'm sure, but if you want to use view in a browser reply feature, you have to have the read-only access given to that MassMailer guest user. It's very important. So again, if you do not know what these features are, there's another webinar topic where I spoke about these two features in length. So just highlight view in a browser. Basically, if you want to have a link in your email by clicking on that link, if you want the users to actually look at the template, you can embed that particular link in the email template. Also, if you want to capture a reply event, meaning somebody responds to your email and you want to capture that as a reply event in MassMailer, again, there's a setup that needs to be done. But again, if you want this to be working, you need to have that read-only user license assigned to the MassMailer guest user. Templates. Again, very important. Whenever you're trying to create a template, make sure that whoever the user is going to use the template builder, they have full access to the template folders where you want them to create the templates. Otherwise, they may not even see that template folder. You'll wonder why they're not able to see it. So whenever they go to the MassMailer template builder, so make sure that the users have the full access to the template folder wherever you want them to create the template. And also, you must have noticed that we've given both options, HTML and the text-based content for every single email template. You would see that there's a sub-tab in the template builder. You got to give both HTML and text-based content, so you got a better email deliverability. Also, every email template that you're actually gonna use to send out emails, make sure that you're testing that template for the email deliverability, which will give you the deliverability score, and based on which you can decide whether it is good to go or you need to make any changes. So you can use our email monitor plugin to test the deliverability. Again, very important, whether you're using image URLs or video URLs, make sure that those URLs are publicly available. So if, in Salesforce environment, you may see them working because those are native to Salesforce, or could be possible that certain video URLs are not really published outside world, but you are still able to see them. But when it comes to the recipients who are actually receiving this content, they need to have these URLs that are publicly open and available. Otherwise, the images and video URLs may break. So very important to make sure that you have that. Deliverability. So whenever you're trying to send an email, your company may have multiple domains. It's very important to make sure that those domains that you're using to send out emails are authenticated. MassMailer, when you're sending out an email, it does not really go check whether it is authenticated domain or not. You safely assume that you're going to use the authenticated domain. So if you have multiple domains, make sure that you authenticate all the domains that you want to use to send out emails. And also, it's very important to make sure that you're not getting any bounces. So meaning, ideally, it should be 0 bounces whenever you're sending out emails. But it got to be less than 2%. So you wonder, hey, if you send out, say, 100 emails, if you get 10 bounces, you may think, oh, okay, that's not much. But actually, it's a lot. It should not be more than 2%. Otherwise, your domain and IP reputation drastically goes down. So it's very, very important to validate your emails. I mean, I stress this to so many customers, but they ignore. Price is nothing. I mean, email the validation price, the price what we have for email verify credits is not much. If you really look at our pricing, it's quite nominal. So I strongly advise you to make sure that you validate every single email that you have in your system. Don't just let the system hard bounce, assuming, oh, okay, it's okay, just gonna hard bounce and emails will not go next time. That's not the right way to do it. And then you got to make sure that you're periodically checking for the domain and the IP for the blacklist using the MassMailer email monitor. If at all those are blacklisted, you got to do something about it. But make sure that you are checking the domain and IP for the blacklist. Okay, and then you got to also analyze the report that is given by MassMailer email monitor and take any necessary action. So when I say necessary action, again, the report that you get from MassMailer email monitor will have the detailed instructions on the problems and also the solution. So you just have to read upon that report and then go through whatever instructions that we give to fix those issues. You can actually just go and take care of that. That's the email monitor. Again, if you're not aware of what email monitor is, it's a deliverability feature what MassMailer provides, in which we let you analyze the template that you're using. So it could validate the template content. Also, it may look at the infrastructure. It'll look at a few other things and the structure of the email, the layout, and the HTML, the links. So there are many things that we actually analyze and give you a report on. So it's very important to make sure that you read that report carefully and then take any necessary action on the deliverability. Suppressions, again, very important. If you actually migrated from a different system, such as MailChimp or a Constant Contact, or those kind of systems, it's very important to make sure that you're actually migrating the suppressions such as bounces and unsubscribes and any other suppressions that you may have from the other system. So you could just import them in one go. That feature is available. If those are already flagged in your Salesforce database, that may make it very easy. You just have to, again, add to suppression list. So we have a feature that's already there, part of MassMailer, and you can also go through that video that I spoke about, the same thing in a separate webinar topic. And if you ever wanted to, like, sometimes these emails are not really bouncing, but you don't want to send emails to those email addresses forever. But at the same time, you don't want to delete them from your database, and you don't want to kind of rely on the salespeople that they're actually going to go suppress these emails on their own. Then the solution is you just go add them to suppression list using the manual option. As long as they are in the suppression list record, it'll anyways going to suppress them, but manual will give you an idea that, okay, somebody manually entered this for whatever reason. You can also enter the reason field. That way you remember why you added. So that's, again, we've spoken about all of these features in separate videos, but it's very important to make sure that you understand this. Template builder. So I've noticed that many times template builder, the editor does not show up. So people wonder what happened. It could be a simple issue with the browser settings. And also if you have a personal firewall on your laptop or a computer, then that's going to block certain scripts running because this is a plugin, the editor is a plugin. So you need to let that editor run in your browser. So a few things that I've noticed, the firewall, if you have not enabled the JavaScript, and then at the same time, you also have to enable pop-ups in order for this to work. And if you have any browser plugin or extensions that are blocking the template builder, you will actually come to know, if at all, like if you have any plugins, you can disable all the plugins or extensions and then try the MassMailer template builder. And if it loads, which means there's a problem with one of the plugins or multiple. So you just have to kind of go one at a time and then disable or enable certain extension, like disable all of them once, and then slowly start enabling one extension at a time. And you will ultimately find out the culprit. So make sure that you do not enable that particular extension, especially when you're using the template builder. So that's very important. And then session settings, if you're an admin, I'm sure you're aware, if you go to Salesforce setup and then session settings, there are certain options. Make sure that the following that are mentioned here are disabled. I'm actually not going through the UI because you'll be able to figure this out very easily. You just have to go to Salesforce setup session settings. So if you find log sessions to IP address from which they originated, log sessions to the domain which they were first used, enable clickjack protection for customer visual forces with standard headers, and then enable clickjack protection for customer visual force pages with headers disabled. So make sure that these are all disabled in your Salesforce instance. Otherwise, you will get certain issues such as the session errors. Again, that's we don't check for this in the UI. That's something that we plan to do eventually. Ultimately, it'll throw an error if at all you have any issues. Any of these ones are checked. Okay. Remote site settings, you may not get this error all the time, but if at all Salesforce pod changed, meaning wherever your Salesforce instance is hosted in the Salesforce hosting environment, that URL sometimes change, provided you do not have a My Domain feature. Especially, this is another reason why you want the My Domain feature to be enabled. If you don't have that, then obviously if Salesforce pod changes, then you may see this error, the remote site settings error. You just have to copy paste that, whatever the site that Salesforce is giving you error as, just go to setup, remote site settings, add that, and then you should be able to get away with that particular error that you're getting with the remote site settings. Okay, so Sandbox, very important. Make sure that you never use the production level SendGrid account in Sandbox. I've seen customers making this mistake. So they just copy paste, or maybe they just cut over from production, and you have the same SendGrid account in Sandbox. They would just go set up Sandbox and start using it. That'll invalidate your production level setup in for MassMailer, because one single instance of Salesforce should have its own SendGrid account. So same thing, production instance should have its own SendGrid account, and the Sandbox should have its own. All you need to do is just get a Sandbox plan from MassMailer, and then set it up in your Sandbox environment. You can reuse if you don't keep the same Sandbox forever. You can delete the Sandbox. It's okay, but you would still have the same SendGrid credentials for Sandbox. You can just reuse that in a different one. So it's very important. So yeah, pretty much kind of covered everything. I may not need another topic, but if at all, I get more and more topics that I want to cover for admins, I'm happy to schedule another webinar and talk about it. But I think pretty much I kind of covered at a high level what I noticed so far, the issues that admins would typically face, and how to kind of mitigate those issues or resolve those issues without having to contact MassMailer for all those purposes. Any questions? Thanks, Duane. Thanks so much for joining the webinar. All right, so here is the contact information. Anytime if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Here is my personal email and the company email and the numbers. This is our weekly webinar. We do it every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific. All these topics are posted on our website and the social channels. If you're part of our email newsletter, then you would be receiving this recording and also the upcoming webinar topic as well. And if you're a new customer, or if you're interested in MassMailer, just click on the free trial link and get started with MassMailer. And I strongly recommend and request you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's so many videos there, 100 plus now. We keep on adding more and more content to our YouTube channel. So please go to our website. The YouTube channel, what we have, you can find our YouTube channel by going to our website at the bottom of the screen. You'll find the link for our YouTube channel. You can just go subscribe to it. That way you get notified as and when there is any new video that we post, you get alerted. And also it's a reference. You can always go back and look up any topic that you wanted to understand about and just go to the video. Typically, these videos are not more than 30 minutes. I mean, very rare that I talk more than 30 minutes, but it's all useful information. I request you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Once again, thank you so much for joining this webinar today. Have a great evening, have a great afternoon, have a great night. Thank you. See you next week.